Hello, hello. Welcome. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Super excited to be here today. I'm Scott Edinburgh, the founder of Personal MBA Coach. For those who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, we're going to be talking about optimizing your round two strategy, even if round one did not go as planned. So this is relevant for anybody applying round two, whether you applied in round one or didn't apply in round one. If you're watching this and you're like, wait, it's not round two anymore, it's still relevant for you. Some of these learnings you can definitely use in a future year as well. And I'm super psyched that in a few minutes I'll be joined by Annie, a client of ours who already gotten accepted to great M7 school. She's going to talk a little bit about her experiences for a few minutes. But we'll kind of jump right into this, right? So those who haven't seen my presentations before, Personal MBA Coach, we've been helping folks get into top schools since 2008. Highly ranked consultant on a number of different leading sites out there. I've been presenting at the annual GMAT conference. I did that a few years ago. Overall, we have a 96% success rate. Although last year, 100% of our clients that did 6 or more schools got accepted, and we got $6.5 million in scholarships. And we're sort of trending in a positive direction this year as well. Boutique, family operated. We run the company seven days a week. And what's interesting about Personal MBA Coach is everybody gets one-on-one support from myself, the founder, or former top M7 admissions director. So we don't have any junior consultants. Many firms have that. Folks working with a few people at a time. We don't have that. A little bit about myself. I went to MIT for undergrad, studied economics and business at Sloan, was a teaching assistant for one of the MBA courses while I was an undergraduate. Then I worked in consulting at Deloitte for a few years and did mostly mergers and acquisitions work there. And then I went to Wharton for the MBA. And I picked it because in high school I took some economics courses at Wharton, like the curriculum, and went back. On the board of directors for AGAC, Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants, and we do different things with AdCom directors. Each year we analyze these fake profiles and sort of debate who's getting accepted and rejected and why. I'm also joined by MJ Shores, director on the team, who's a former Wharton and UCLA admissions director. Served a number of different forums and boards, and there's a couple decades of experience. We also have a former Columbia admissions director who is an advisor with us as well. And then I run the company with my sister, Erin Edinburgh, who used to work at Bain. Is a Forte scholar at Yale and has over 20 years of experience as well. So, a little bit about what we do here. For one thing, we have a pretty structured approach, and I'll talk more about the approach at the end so that we can get into the meat of the presentation, what you can do to make yourself better. So this is sort of, the last slide about us for now. Oh, and thanks, Annie, for joining. I'll introduce you in 1 second. But everyone, can work with me if they want as the founder or former top director. We also have former M7 interviewers. So people used to interview at different top schools and some of the leading editors out there. So everybody that edits with us either used to be an English professor or, master's or PhD from, Harvard and many other schools. And it's a small team. So you don't have 5 different people that you're, sort of liaising with, former clients to network with at all of the top schools, and a pretty extensive knowledge base. I interview many different leading admissions directors, heads of programs, the executives in residence program at Columbia. I interviewed them a couple months ago, and a pretty extensive project management system. And so anyway, I'll talk more about our process in a minute, but maybe I'll pass it off to Annie just to tell us a couple minutes about your situation, what you did with us, and then we'll kind of jump back into the meat of the presentation.
Sure. Hey everyone, I'm Annie. I'm currently applying to business school right now, so really in the midst of the round 1 application season. I initially pursued a consultant because I personally don't know a ton of people applying to business school, so I really needed that extra help just, editing my resume, my essays, helping prep for interviews. And I chose Scott and his boutique because after shopping around, he really seemed to care the most and offer the most personal and tailored advice. Scott really also stood out to me because he remains really connected with AdComs, and it's obviously very helpful to just stay on top of what they're really looking for season to season. I've really had incredible success with interviews so far at M7s as well as my safeties, really showing the effectiveness of the editorial team. I think something else that stood out to me is that all the editors have really strong writing experience, so that has really been reflected in the quality of my essays. And then, moving on to the interview season, my package came with a lot of interview prep, and that has helped a ton, just not only for the schools that I've specifically been prepped for, but for, a few of the other schools as well. But yeah, overall, super awesome experience. I've actually been admitted to Columbia already, so it's been pretty successful so far.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining. Congrats again on the acceptance. A great success story. So happy that you were able to jump in to join us live. And if anyone has any questions for Annie's probably going to drop off, but feel free to post it into the comments, and I can get in touch with her and have her answer any questions that you have. But thank you so much for joining, and congrats again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, so we'll go on to sort of the agenda for today. We're going to talk about school selection and engagement, GMAT, GRE, executive assessment, resumes, rec letters, and essay development. So a few different topics, and hopefully some of these are interesting to you. First, school selection and engagement. The reason we put this on here, and we were actually discussing this last week about whether we should have a slide like this or not. Let's say you applied round one and you didn't get it. Like, obviously, let's add more schools around two. That's kind of given. But you might also want to add schools at the same level. Sometimes people say, I applied to M7, a few of them, I didn't get in. Let me throw in, tier 2 or tier 3 schools. It could be a law of numbers. We have people that, don't get into. So Annie got into Columbia, right? So we have people, and we got 19 people in so far this year into Columbia. So we got a lot in, but we have people that don't get into Columbia, but then they'll get into Wharton, or then they'll get into Stanford. So not getting into a school doesn't mean you can't get into another similar school. It might just mean, they just didn't need somebody like you. And so certainly add some easier schools as well. But also just adding more schools at the same level could make sense. For some schools, round one is easier than round two. The reason I mentioned that is just so that you have a structured approach for how you think about your round two strategy as far as schools are concerned. Let me caveat this slide with, this is not official. This is not complete. This is very anecdotal. This is the first time we've ever shared anything like this. It doesn't come from actual data from schools, except for what we see, right? So obviously something like a Columbia that is rolling, the later you go, the harder it is to get it. Everybody knows that. So that's why, round two is going to be more challenging, there. But also, like MIT, they don't save space. So if they like somebody in round one, they'll take them. Darden has this, early admission. And so, round two might be a little bit more challenging. It might not be. It depends on the year. Wharton we have here with an asterisk. I used to say there's no difference. We send a ton of people to Wharton each year and do really well there. We just finished up 6 mock group interviews, or 7, I think. I used to say, there's no difference between round one and round two. But actually lately, round two has been slightly more challenging. What that means is not that you shouldn't apply in round two. You absolutely should. And we'd love to help you. But maybe let's add some other schools as well, just in case. At the same time, Chicago Booth tends to wait. They defer a lot of people from round one to round two. Round two is a great round. Yale, every year we send people in round 3 even. So it tends to be not a huge difference. Harvard, Stanford, when you're starting with such difficult schools and such low admit rates, you don't see a big enough delta, right? So it doesn't mean round two is easier, but if you think, I missed round one, I can't get into Harvard, that's not really true, right? They take people in round two. And when you're looking at a 6% admit rate for Stanford, it can't go that much lower than that by round two. So it's really not a huge difference. The other thing I'll say about the timing and the rounds is this is a great time to be applying to schools. And I'll talk more about that in a minute, but we don't have the most applicants ever applying. So if you're thinking, I might go this year, I might wait, I'm not sure, go now. Like, as loud as I can scream, start the process today. App numbers are not very high right now. With the recession coming, they will go higher. So if you're not sure, be sure and apply now. Of course, I don't know you, and so your situation might be different. Maybe you don't have a good test score and you think you won't get there, or you don't have enough experience or something. But if you're sort of on the fence, definitely think about applying now, for sure. So let's talk about engagement, right? How much do you really need to network? Sometimes I hear, I didn't talk to admissions director at Stanford. I didn't talk to Kirsten, so I know Kirsten really well, and sad that she's going to be leaving soon. But she doesn't evaluate talking to her in the process, so it doesn't really matter if you engaged with her at Stanford or didn't engage. Some schools do value this type of engagement, and so you need to think about which ones do and which ones don't. I'm not going to publicly sort of discuss that here, but for our clients, there's definitely a list where we say, hey, make sure to go to events and talk to admissions directors from these particular programs. But even when you're engaging with folks, really, like, students are more important. You don't want to bog down an admissions director with lots of emails and calls. There are only so many of them, and there are a lot of you. Talking to students is great. You can visit. If you're not near the school, you don't have to visit. You can visit online. That's fine. Virtual visits count as well. Office hours, coffee chats. And then again, like certain schools, there's just Stanford and Harvard are two of them. There's no measure of engagement in the process. So it literally doesn't matter. You could talk to 100 students, visit the campus 5 times, or just open the app and type in your name, and it won't make any difference. And so just being aware of that is important. So next is test score, right? Get a high test score, of course. That's sort of a silly slide. But one thing I'll cover here, well, 3 things, okay? Common causes for testing failure. We used to have a slide that explained about the exams and how it works and the timing and everything, but then I think everyone here probably knows that already. And so I'm going to skip over the basics. If you have any questions about the basics, feel free to reach out. But common causes for testing failure. One, you might just be studying the wrong way. There are many ways to study. You can study on your own. You can do practice tests. You can get books. There's, you can pay $800 for a software that gives you thousands of hours of stuff. You can get a private tutor. We have some of the best tutoring in the industry. We're often pretty tight on resources, so we do have some space now, given it's not the busiest time in the world now. But at least a few times a year we're on a wait list. And so if you want some help for tutoring, let us know if you have that budget. But figure out the right way, for you. Often people say, well, I've taken a class and I've taken the test a few times. I didn't raise my score. I'm all done. And I can't tell you how many people every year, it's a lot, that I convince over multiple calls to retake the test, and they ultimately do. They do well. They get into their school. So you might not have taken the test enough times, right? People take it multiple times. And I always say, if you're going to raise your score, I don't care how many times it takes you. It doesn't mean I want 8 attempts. If you can get 2 or 3 attempts, that's obviously better. But if you're in that 7th attempt and you're like, oh my God, I can't show them an 8th attempt. And then on that 8th attempt, let's say hypothetically, you get 30 points higher or 20 points higher, it's absolutely worth it to show that extra attempt. So you always want to think about what is the likelihood of raising that score. Maybe you're just taking the wrong test. You have the GMAT, you have the GRE, you have the executive assessment. So maybe you're not taking the right test for you. And I'll talk more about the differences among the tests in a minute. So some other key test prep tips. Don't wait until you have your score to begin your applications. I'll say that again. Do not wait until you have your score to start the apps, especially now. If you're watching this today or anytime after today, it's November 8th at least, or maybe you're watching it later, we don't have a lot of time, right? The apps are due in 2 months if you're applying in round 2. And you don't need the score. You just need some confidence for what your score will be, or some ability to predict it or something like that. And if you do wait for the score, then you're going to rush the essays. And often I hear, well, I'll come back to you, once I have the score. But guess what? We do a lot of work with people prepping their score plus the essays at the same time. And so anyway, that's one thing. Next, look at money spent on prep as a sunk cost. This is an economics lesson, and I'm not a professor, but that might be fun. Say we're in business school and I spent X amount of dollars or time, on this course or this local tutor or whatever. I'm not even trying to sell our services because we honestly can't help all of you. We only have a few open slots, but whatever you did is done. It's now not costing you anything. What's the best strategy for you today, right? What's the prep that's going to get you your score now? And if that means you need more help, then maybe you need more help, or maybe not. Next, if you're struggling and you have a strong academic record, consider a waiver. Now, waivers are not designed for everybody. I'll say that again. Test waivers are not designed for everybody. Sometimes I hear people come to me and they say, "Oh, I'm, MIT, can waive and Darden can waive. So let's waive." Well, let's give an example, right? Let's say we're from Mumbai and we went to a non-target school and we got like a 65% and we're an Indian male engineer. The waiver is not designed for you. It's just not. An admissions director can't say that because legally and publicly they can't say that, but it's really not, right? The waiver is designed to get people who might have otherwise not taken the test, or they had some issues, or didn't have the time, they're otherwise able to demonstrate really strong abilities in other parts of the application, or to get new people that aren't as equipped. So if you are working in investment banking or private equity, also most of your colleagues won't waive the test. And so if you do, it's sort of a red flag. Like, why were you not able to take a GMAT? So you have to have a good academic record in order for a waiver to make sense for you. And even if the school gives you a waiver, it doesn't mean you'll get in. So in general, we are not in favor of waivers at Personal MBA Coach, except for certain circumstances. And we have amazing clients. I have clients who've gotten in already, and they either waive or they take the executive assessment. And for some people, it makes a lot of sense. But you have to think about that. So GMAT, GRE, and executive assessment. I won't talk about the GMAT and the GRE as far as what they are, because I'm sure you know that. But the executive assessment is a shorter GMAT. It's a GMAT Lite. It was designed for executive MBA programs because a lot of working professionals that were more experienced and had 3 kids at home and vice presidents or something, they don't have time to study. And so it's a 90-minute exam. It has quant, it is verbal, and it has IR. But the IR is a bigger part of the exam. It's a third of the exam versus the GMAT. It's not. It uses less material. It takes half the time to study. And so where does the EA make sense, right? The EA makes sense if your GMAT score is not going to be good, basically. That's one way. That's really the most common reason why people take the EA. For whatever reason, the EA it's a better test for them. And we have clients, Columbia is a great example because Columbia takes the EA, NYU as well. And anyway, we can go over the whole list, but that just didn't do well on the GMAT. Highest score is 660. Switch over to the EA, they get a 150 something or 157 or 60 or whatever, and they get in. So that could be a good test for you. The GRE, of course, if your verbal is great and your math is not good, that's the most common reason for a GRE. Maybe you're doing dual degree programs or engineering masters, and they want to see a GRE score. But if you are strong and you come from a very overrepresented background that might normally take the GMAT, you're probably better off taking the GMAT. Even if they take the GRE, if all your colleagues are going to get great GMAT scores and you're taking the GRE, the bar is just going to be a little bit higher for you. The quant is easier. And so a 75th percentile GMAT does not equal a 75th percentile GRE on the quant. So you can take any test that you want that the school accepts. But don't forget about the EA. We were the first firm, I think, out there to do EA tutoring. I have my 2 best tutors that do executive assessment tutoring. It's a really good exam, for the right people at the right time. Okay, so next we'll talk about the MBA resume. So let's talk about the differences between the professional resume and the MBA resume. And I could talk for an hour about resumes, but we'll just kind of devote a few minutes to this. Professional resume, it's going to sell your ability to do the job. As you're sorting through resumes, and if let's say I'm hiring a marketing manager for my company and I'm looking through resumes, right, there's certain things I want to look at. SEO or maybe SEM. Okay, do we have, social media experience? What's our ability to, dissect data and analyze to pull results? So there's certain things I'm looking for. Business schools, they don't look for any particular thing in the resume. It's just an overall picture. So you don't have to have certain skills or have certain experiences. They want to see that you've demonstrated leadership and that you've been successful. So while you might need to demonstrate certain things to get that marketing manager job, to apply to business school, you really don't. And so don't worry about trying to show my analytical skills. Hey, if you don't have the best analytical skills at your job, don't try to make it up. You're much better off being honest. At MIT Sloan took middle school Spanish teacher a few years ago. People have a lot of different backgrounds that go to business schools, and you don't have to be a consultant or do analysis or Excel modeling or anything like that to get in. Now, if you have those skills, it's great, but it's much more important that you can prove that you did your job better than peers or than expectations. And so what does the resume look like? For those of you in India, this will be different from the one that you're used to. We don't have any grids or lines. This is a resume. I have all of our clients use this template. We fleshed it out and changed a little bit from here. But anyway, something that's like this, where you have your name up top, you have experience, right? Experience comes first. Unless you're applying to Sloan, they want your education to come first. You've got title, and you have details here, but make them brief. You don't want to have 7 lines for a bullet, nor do you want to have the bullets all be 1 line. I know they look like they're 1 line in here, but when it's all typed out, it would be more a couple lines, let's say. You have education, some extracurriculars, and interests, languages, things like that down at the bottom to sort of round it out. But the meaty part is this experience part at the top. And to have each bullet stand on its own, so that if they read 1 bullet and that's it, they get a sense of the story, because they won't read the entire resume. Nobody reads every line of a resume. And so you have to have the bullets sort of stand alone, so that if I only catch a few of the bullets, say I read 3 or 4 bullets, I'm getting a sense of what you've done in your career. So key aspects of a strong resume, highlighting your strengths, demonstrating leadership, even if it's not something that is required to do at a job, but it's something that you did, created a new employee engagement protocol, which led to 30% more engagement despite everybody working remotely during COVID. I made that up. That's not really the best bullet, but perhaps that shows a little bit of leadership. If you can show results, that's really good, but you don't have to have it for every bullet. Measurable results. So, reduced by 15% or double the turnaround or something like that. Numbers, they want to see what the impact of your work has been and just your work itself, but don't have too many numbers. Sometimes I look at a resume and it's like, I see 6 numbers in 1 bullet, and then I read the bullet and I'm already lost and I forgot what the first number was. So you want to have something that's really kind of easy to digest at the same time. Establish skills, right? Prove that you did the job better than others. Don't throw everything on the resume. Avoid jargon. If you have a word on your resume that you think, like, I might not know, or maybe I'm not the best example, but maybe your friend doesn't know, or your mother or grandmother, perhaps, maybe it's not the best word, because you don't know who's going to read your resume. A lot of people will be reading your resume. You'll have, let's start with interviewers. You'll have local interviewers read the resume. They could work in a variety of different industries. You could have an admissions director. You could have someone from career services. You could have a student reader. You could have a lot of different people read your resume. So you have to make it general enough that an average audience is going to follow it. Ensure that skills and accomplishments are presented well. Things not to do: multiple pages. So if you're applying to a full-time MBA program or part-time, it's 1 page. It's a hard rule, 1 page. If you're doing an executive MBA program, 2 pages is okay. And we do a lot of executive MBA programs, and whether that's in the US, in Europe, abroad, we help folks all over. Really, 1 page is important. Don't bold any words. You can bold like the company name or something like that, but you don't want to bold. Sometimes people bold words to make them stick out on the resume. It's not the approach that you're looking for here. And so you don't want to have anything bolded. And don't have like too little white space. Right? The idea is not to fill up if you look back here, and this obviously isn't filled out, but once it is filled out, there's still white space. So you don't want to have size 9 font to fill in everything you can in the resume. That's also not going to be a good idea. So that's on resumes. For letters of recommendation, let's talk about letters of recommendation now. So, and ask any questions you have in the session, the sort of questions online, and we'll be able to answer them. And for those of you still here and listening, we are offering a special offer on our services. First time ever that I've done this, only for people listening live. So I actually can't say what it is because it'll be recorded later, but reach out and we'll certainly make a great package for you as well later too. But for those watching live, fill out the information. I think that there's a link to collect your information, and then we can communicate what this is. So start to think about your letter of recommendation strategy in detail, right? Ask someone who will write an amazing letter. What does this mean? The quality of the letter is the most important thing. So it could be a senior analyst, it could be a manager, it could be a director, it could be the partner, it could be the CEO, it could be the group CEO. I don't care. I want to know that that person is going to write a really good letter. That's number one. Number two, I should say to read number one, make sure it's strong. I say that because the quality is really high. And title and prestige really don't matter. You want to make sure that they've worked with you for a while. What does a while mean? Well, a few months, 6 months or more. It depends on the job. Let's say you're doing consulting and the longest case that you have is 6 weeks and you moved around. Okay, maybe 6 weeks is the longest that you can do, but maybe a counselor sort of followed your work and your progress. Start doing things that you want written about. We like to strategize as much as we can at Personal MBA Coach. And one of the first things that we do when we kick off a client is we have kick off a new client today. We're doing 20 hours of tutoring and 6 schools. We're going to get it all in round 2. We're very excited. We're going to talk about his goals and what the plan is post MBA. So making sure that the goals are at the right level of detail and clarity and they're realistic. We have a whole goal statement exercise that we work on. We'll also talk about the rec letter strategy. Make sure that you start doing things that you want written about. Let's say your analytical skills aren't the best in the world and you want to present a picture of you being strong from a numbers standpoint. Well, start doing some things now, right? So that it becomes stronger by the time they end up writing the letters. You can ask non-professional references if you have strong extracurriculars. It's not my favorite, to be honest, but if it makes sense for you or you can't ask your boss, let's say your boss, would fire you if they know you were leaving for school. Okay, let's not get fired. So let's not ask them. Let's ask somebody else, and that's fine. Maybe it has to be somebody from outside of work. Ask your references early. Early means today, right? So if you're applying in round 2, whenever you're watching this, ask today. Don't wait. Holidays are coming up. You don't want to wait a while. Let's say you're watching this in round 1 and, ask like a couple months ahead of the deadline, something like that. You can use influential or informal sort of alumni notes in some cases. I say in some cases because it depends. You don't want to have too many people write these things. It's nice to show a school that you're connected with the school and that there's someone who's, an alum of that school that knows you and likes you and thinks that you'll be a good fit. And that could definitely help, but you want to be strategic about that. And one thing we do is help folks figure out which schools do you want to do this for? How many should you send? When should they be sent? Right? So there are a few different things to consider. So what makes a good letter of recommendation? It's funny. I was talking internally. I think this is one of the first slides I've ever created. So it has my old Deloitte consulting template here, but specificity, recency, honesty, and detail. That's what matters. So specificity is they're going to compare you to others, and it will be clear what you did that the next person didn't do. They want to see your teamwork. How have you grown? Make sure that examples are used. Like, you're going to be very specific. It's not Mary Jane was one of the best analysts that PwC has ever had. And every time we give her a project, she does it really well. She has top reviews, always requested by clients and partners, and is a very fast promoter and it would be a great fit for your school. I think that's not a good letter. I haven't learned anything about this particular applicant except that she's, quote, good. But what does that mean, right? What did she actually do that is good? So going back to that detail bullet at the end, make sure that the recommenders are answering the questions, right? So if I'm good, what did I do specifically that was good? What did I do that was not good? Jumping back up to recency, make sure that your current abilities are reflected. And this is important because you don't want things to be too old, especially if you've had a few jobs and your recommender, writes from 5 years ago. There are certain schools that actually don't like old rec letters at all. And I can't publicly say which ones here, but you might have some of those schools on your list and you want to make sure that you're doing this right. And so make sure that there's some element of recency here. Honesty, right? Of course, the quality is high, but you're human and you're applying to school. If you were already running a huge company and you were extremely successful and you have 7 more companies coming up and you're the best person ever, and there's really nothing that you could do to be better, then don't apply to business school. You want to make sure that the feedback is feedback, that you did something poorly. Scott presented the data well to the clients, but when he made recommendations, the recommendations weren't that clear, and he didn't demonstrate his knowledge of the different counterparties in the room. And so I gave Scott feedback that next time he really has to, suss out the room beforehand and make sure that he can clearly communicate this to, divergent audiences. And it's something that he's starting to work on, right? Real, like I messed up in that situation, real feedback where you did something poorly and you're now starting to try to do that better. And that's important because a believable letter is better than one that's not believable. We have this, better than God letter. Nobody's perfect. And so it should be clear that, there was something that you did that was not good. And now you're thinking about how to do it better. Pay attention to the question differences across school. We send all of our clients the questions for all the rec letters before they begin. It's complicated. There's a lot of stuff out there, and not all the schools release them publicly to applicants, so it can be a little tricky to find them. So we just have a file that says, like, this is everything your recommender needs to do. As long as you read that, you don't need to do anything. Make sure that you figure out what the questions are and that the recommenders actually answer them. It seems sort of stupid, but I see letters from recommenders that sometimes don't do that. And it's like, hey, that's not what Kellogg was asking. And you actually have to do this a little bit differently. The length is also important. Now, the rec letter length is not as crucial as the length is for, your essay, let's say. But it is, it is kind of important that they stick somewhat closely related to the, the actual length. Okay. So moving on to essays, I think I've been a resume question. So let's see if I can pop in and answer that. So I'll answer this quick question, then we'll go back to questions at the end. How do admissions teams at various schools verify a resume? There's no verification that's done just on the resume alone. Once you finish the applications to the schools, there's a background check company. Most of them are using Rivera these days, and they will do their independent background checks to make sure that the dates and titles and everything line up and is truthful. But that's really what's done. They're not going to go in and did XYZ project to save. I switched to Geico and say 15% on my car insurance. They won't see, it was actually 13%, and he wrote 15%. That doesn't really happen. So don't worry about that. As long as you're honest and truthful, that's fine. If something changes after the fact that you can't control, don't worry about that. But what I tell people is 16 years doing this, I've never had an honest person get in trouble. Ever. Can't say I never had anybody get in trouble, but never had anybody that's honest. If you're honest and you're just writing things that actually are true, you'll be fine. So essay writing, right? Let's talk about essay writing. It's a multi-step process. So, what do you do? And make sure to tune into our other webinars. Here's a shout out to other content that we have. GMAT Club is phenomenal with all these YouTubes. We'll be doing another YouTube with GMAT Club that'll be coming up. I believe it's about 10 days from now on the 18th. And we'll be deep diving into school essays. What do you need to do? How do you get into the school? What are you writing for all these essays? We won't have time to cover that today, but we'll be doing that in the next one. And also on our website, personalmbacoach.com, we have a lot of resources. If you're looking to hire a consultant, great, reach out. We offer free consultations for those looking to hire a consultant. We don't just do profile evaluations. But if you're looking to hire us and you've reviewed our packages, we'd love to chat. If you're not and you just want advice, jump on our website anyway. We have a lot of resources. If you're not sure, check out our resources, videos, and different PowerPoints and different presentations and a lot of things that might help you. So essay writing is a multi-step process. You have to brainstorm. You have to outline. You don't have to outline, but if you do, it might make your essays a little bit stronger. Draft. And then you're editing again and again, and you're proofreading. I put this out here because it takes time. So for those of you who haven't started yet, now's the time to get started on the process. Answer the question, right? And consider why it was asked. So the reason we put this here is because sometimes we get an essay back and let's say maybe it's really long. Let's say that it's a 500-word essay and someone writes 800 words. Well, the first thing I'll say is, you didn't even look at what the length was. While you're writing 800 words for 500, write 5 to 550. Stick within the limit. That'll make your essay that much stronger at the end. Write what they're asking for. So if they ask you about your post-MBA plans and how the school will help you, and you write 200 words about your grandmother and how your grandmother came to your country and how that's motivating you to be a better leader, that it's not really relevant. It might be relevant, but it's not what they're asking, right? They ask about you. They don't want 200 words about relatives. Don't try to write what you think they want to know unless you're working with a strong professional. So, okay, I'm very well connected with admissions directors. I'd say, friendly with most of them, do a lot of talks around the world on applying to schools, probably 50 talks a year. I might know certain things that the directors aren't writing in the questions, but, absent that, don't just kind of assume that they want to hear something unless they're explicitly asking you that. And again, schools place varying importance on different specific criteria. So it might be more important to write about something that happened in the past for one school, and the other school might want to know about things that are happening in the future. So MIT and Columbia are two examples, very opposites. Columbia wants to know about the future, MIT wants to know about the past. So if you try to use the same content across both schools, it might not work out so well. Think about your career goals, right? But don't overthink them. I'll say that again. Don't overthink your career goals. What you want to do post-MBA doesn't really matter so much. I know that might sound weird, and I'm a consultant, and what I do is guide people through their goals, so I shouldn't say it doesn't matter, but I said it doesn't matter so much, meaning there are a lot of things that you can do. Most goals can get you accepted. So if you think, do I want to write consulting, or do I want to write banking, or maybe I want to do internal finance, and you could probably write a lot of those things. As long as the story is logical and it's clear, right? Simpler goals are better than more complicated ones. What happens in this process, and admissions directors take a different amount of time to read through every application. And I have the number of minutes for certain schools actually, but it's not 2 hours, right? Nobody's going to sit down and read your materials for 2 hours. So they'll read through it. They'll read through the next one and the next one. They want to walk away and have a clear story. One that says, okay, I know, Scott's done consulting. He wants to help more companies grow. He's going to work in general management, take his consulting skills to some other industries and help to, do internal strategy work or something. It doesn't have to be super crazy. And excuse me, if you like your current company, you can go back. That's fine. In fact, I actually like people that are going back to their current companies because it seems like it's more likely that they'll get the job. The worst thing to write is something that's very outlandish. Let's say I'm doing, take that Spanish teacher I mentioned. Let's say the middle school Spanish teacher is writing about, wanting to join a venture capital firm post-MBA. That's something that's probably just going to be harder for them to do. Not that they can't ever do it, but immediately post-MBA, maybe that's not going to happen. In general, be decisive and specific. So one goal short-term, one goal long-term. And then it should really make sense. Make sure to be showing school specifics here and actually make them specific, right? So not MIT Sloan has innovative professors or, I'm excited to take Kellogg's marketing classes. Boring. Nobody cares about this, right? Write something that's going to make sense for you. And it's going to be very clear that you're writing this. And the next 10 people applying might not be writing that. Schools want to know why you want to join their unique campuses, connect the classes to what you want to do in your future career, and really be detailed. You don't have to cover everything, though. There are only so many essays, and there's a lot of stuff. So you might just write a few things that you want to do. Interestingly enough, MIT and Kellogg don't ask why you want to go to their schools. And so it's kind of funny that I put them in here. But, when you're writing this, make sure that you're being specific about that particular school. Be consistent, but not repetitive. All the application pieces, they're sort of different pieces of the puzzle. And so you want to show what makes you unique, have a theme, let the theme carry throughout the application. We were just discussing internally. So we have regular meetings where we, discuss with our editors and our, admissions directors about different clients and situations. So we talked about an HBS essay with this applicant who's phenomenal. And I can't obviously say who it is, but it was just a very different essay. And it was really cool. The way that they broke it up, the different paragraphs, it was a kind of a unique structure. that, we thought's going to really work and shine. And so, if you're watching now, you'll know that I'm talking about you. But they're not going to tell the same story multiple times, right? So what's being conveyed in this HBS essay is not going to be written by the recommenders. It's not going to come across in the resume, because you only have so many different ways that you can convey your story, and you want to show different elements of you. So our clients got over $6.5 million in scholarships last year, and we send clients to all the top schools. This is a sampling, but all the top US schools, of course, and even like not top schools, tier 2 and tier 3, we can help you there as well, and arguably get you even more scholarships. Canadian schools, European schools, don't do a lot in Asia, honestly, that much. But other than that, we can help you all over Australia. Although more Australians actually want to come to school here in the US is what we found. So we'll talk about the process a little bit, then we'll go on to questions. So first of all, tutoring, GMAT, GRE, and executive assessment tutoring. We have in-house software that you can use to guide through the sessions with modules, sample questions, thousands of answers, full-length exams. We'll spend some time teaching concepts, teacher to student, helping you to think through how to answer questions more efficiently, effectively. I have some of the best tutors out there. Everyone has 99th percentile, but my tutors are scoring even higher. I have a small team. So it's very hard for me to hire a tutor. I'd love to hire more, but we're very tough. And I think that what's nice about our tutoring is it's quite personalized. So it's not like a large company where they might be teaching in the same way, or a lot of different variability in the tutor that you might get. You're getting some really, really top quality kind of curated tutors. And I guarantee everybody loves everything that we have. There's never a situation where someone's working with us and they're not enjoying it. Of course, we brainstorm your ideas. What should you be writing about? What goes in the personal story? Help you to select the schools. Pretty frank about school selection. And some people like this, some people don't. It's sort of my style. I'm probably not going to change it, except to say that if you come to me with schools and I don't think they're the right fit, I'll tell you that, before you sign up, so that you can rest assured, if we're taking you on, we believe in you, and we believe that your list of schools makes sense for you, and we believe that we can get you in there. Of course, we'll help you with the resume editing, figuring out what to write, what not to write. And actually, just a bit on the school selection. If you're not sure about career progress or outcome or fit, because you know so much about the schools, I can say, hey, I think this might be the right place for you, and you might thrive in this environment versus that environment. And it's complicated. You have full-time MBAs, you have part-time MBAs, you have 2-year MBAs, 1-year MBAs, you've got tech MBAs, you have executive MBAs. And so if you're sort of in the middle, that kind of 9-10 years of experience, I can help you to figure out what are the right types of programs for you. Of course, you do all the editing for the essays. We have essay guides for the schools. We'll show you what success looks like. I can go into more of my process offline if anybody is interested in working together. Please reach out, scott@personalmbacoach.com, or you can submit an inquiry on our website, www.personalmbacoach.com as well. And we have a lot of materials, as I mentioned. One of them is the M7 essay analysis ebook. And so I know you can't click on this, but it's personalmbacoach.com/guides-pages. And then from there, you can click to the M7 essay analysis. And that gives you a sense for, what we're thinking about when it comes to analyzing some of these essays. So let me flip back here to answer some questions that folks have. Okay. Hello, I'm joining from Ghana. Fantastic. We got a whole contingency in Africa. Zim. We have a lot of folks in Zim, Zimbabwe, that we work with. Okay. So let's see. After 2 years of asset management, is it good to go for an MBA in the finance major? Well, let's see. If you had 2 years of experience and you're applying now, then you would matriculate with 3 years of experience. That's a little bit on the lower side, but still definitely could be enough. I think I kind of need to know more about you and some of the work that you're doing. So, but yeah, certainly could be a good plan. And then as far as finance, are you looking to, kind of stay in finance, or do something different going forward? Okay. So, hi from Calcutta. Hello. Applying round 2. We're on 2. 2HG. Okay. So my GMAT is 780, but my GPA is a 3.3. Does my GMAT score cover my low GPA? I think so. Yeah. I need to know more about you and the programs you're applying to and how many schools. Usually people are going for, 6, 7 schools, but I think so. I think that overcomes it. We have, this wasn't Annie, but I had another client who was going to join, when she couldn't, who had a similar score. Let's say within 10 points of your score. The GPA was lower, like not as good as that. Definitely not. She did well. She already got into Columbia. I'm saying Columbia admits because it's November and most of the other schools haven't come out, but Columbia and Duke and um, Darden. And she got in and did really well, actually. So I think so. I think with a 780 and a 3.3, we could certainly get you accepted. We already have one that's similar that got into a top M7. It's probably going to get some more. That's what prep site did you use to help secure? Okay. So next is, can I have a recommender from my and by the way, there's certain schools that are more okay with low GPAs. And so if you want some help, reach out to us, because some schools are just GPA doesn't matter. GMAT is most important versus GPA is really important. And the GMAT won't kind of help you quite as much for those schools. Can I have a recommender from my previous employer? Worked with the recommender from 2020 to 2021 start. Yeah, you can, because early 2021, it's like a year and a half ago. And I think it's not too long. So that certainly could be a fine plan. Okay. So here's one. I recently got my US citizenship, previously Indian citizenship. Will that make my chances easier? So I get this comment and question a lot from people. The short answer is no. But the more complicated answer is the way it helps you is it opens you up to being able to talk about more goals. Let's say if you need to be sponsored, then you're somewhat restricted as far as writing the goals, because you can't talk about joining every company in the world if they need to sponsor you, and maybe the tiniest little company is less likely to want to go through that process. And so people tend to go for larger, more standard companies. There's less entrepreneurship because of the need for the visa. That's where it helps you. It's not like there's a certain quota for citizenship. I mean, yes, of course, they're not going to take everybody from India in the class, but if you're from India and now you're a citizen, but you're from India and you spent your whole life in India, that's still you. And the fact that you have a green card or not doesn't actually change that. So it's going to help you, and it's great that you have that for sure. But it's more so helps you expand your options as far as the post MBA goals more than anything else. Hey Scott, I know MBAs value work experience, but what if you want to go to MBA to get another work field relatively early in your career? I'll have 3 years work experience by the time I matriculate. Sandeep, yeah, that's a great question. So 3 years could be enough, especially this year. The numbers are not crazy high as far as applications. 3 years could be enough. I'd want to look at your profile in more detail, because some people go after 3, obviously more go after 4, and then 5 is sort of that peak, and then it starts to trail down. But we definitely have clients that have 3 years of experience. Yes, make sure to hit the like button on the video if you like the video. If you don't like the video, hit the like button anyway and tell me why you didn't like it. I'll fix it for next time. Okay, so here's another question from Sai. Thank you for doing this. You're most welcome. Thanks for coming. Can you share your thoughts on taking up an MBA during recession? Could you perhaps shed light on what sectors and roles will be most affected? Yes, great question. So let me tell you more about myself personally. I like long walks on the beach. No, well, I do, but I went to school during recession, and I applied kind of around this time. When I was applying, stock market was pretty good. Housing prices were pretty. It was like, all right. And then I got in, boom, 2008. Kind of like where you are now, right? It's coming. Like the recession is coming, but we're not quite here yet. This is absolutely the time to be applying. There's really no better time, because numbers are not super high today. They were higher in round 1. The round 2 numbers are not quite as high as even some people thought they might be so far. And so apply now. And then you're going to get into school. The recession is going to be there. Well, you don't want to be working during a recession because guess what? You might lose your job. Bonuses are certainly not going to be the highest that they were. If you don't lose your job, other people might. It might be stressful. So when I went, once I left Deloitte, I mean, people just got canned left and right. And it was like, I got out just in time. And then the people that were left, a lot of them got fired and they were like good employees. And so you kind of get out, you're in school. Okay, jobs aren't great for a couple of years. And then you leave school. All of a sudden now the job market is better, right? It's a cyclical process. And obviously what's going down is going to come up. You'll learn that in business school as well. So it's a great time. I did it. I think it's fantastic. What sectors and roles will be most affected? Well, you could probably guess, tech, tech is a starting one, healthcare, maybe not quite as much, right? So you think about, companies that are overvalued and maybe the revenues are going to start to dry up a little bit. And, perhaps they're going to be impacted a little bit more if you're working for, so I just started, or talked with a client who works at a tire manufacturer, so like, okay, tires versus, I don't know, tech versus healthcare. Like you think about hospitality, those are all going to be impacted a little bit differently. And so anyway, we can go more about that. But yes, taking an MBA during recession is a great move, and you'll be fine because you'll come out of it, and it'll be a good job market. So I think it's a really smart plan. And then by next year, more people are going to be applying, so it'll be more competitive. So here from Bree, background is non-traditional. I worked in the advertising industry for 5 years. Oh, okay, we can't help you there. You must log off. Sorry, I don't know why I have bad jokes. My daughter tells me my jokes are not that good. We help advertisers actually. Not huge, but we have a couple a year, 2 or 3 a year. I think that's fine. You transition to fintech as a head of marketing, and I think your second part of the question is you want to apply to M7 schools, but your GPA is lower at 2.5, and you're targeting 700 plus. Do you stand a chance? So I would love it if you want to reach out to me separately so that I can see the whole resume and see the rest of the profile to fully evaluate you. I will say that with a 2.5 and an M7, that's gonna be tough. I think it's gonna be hard. I won't say impossible, but that's definitely lower than they like to see. And so we do help a lot of people with low GPAs get in sort of at the 3 and maybe a little bit under. I don't have a ton of data points with 2.5 with M7, to be totally honest. But I don't want to say no until I look at everything and look at the resume and what school did you go to and all of that. So are application numbers down this year? Is the pool less competitive than last year? Yes, to both of those questions. But it's not super simple, right? Because from each market, it might not be the case. You have overall numbers could be down, but in India, maybe numbers aren't down as much, right? So you have to think about that. Overall, application numbers are down, and it is less competitive. Yes, that's the current stat. This comes from, numbers from schools, from talking with admissions directors. I do events from our own, numbers and talking with other colleagues. So yes, it definitely is a little bit less competitive overall globally than it was last year. So again, good time to be applying. Okay, have another question. I am of Indian ethnicity, but am a Bahamian citizen and have been living here since 2005. Do you think being a Bahamian will assist in some way, as I think that is not as common? Yes, it will. So it's like any kind of diversity, right? We want different, interesting stories. So we have, we have people. I mean, I have an Indian client who's in Botswana and raised and sort of spent most of the life in Botswana. That's different. I mean, they're going to write something different in their story than the one from Bombay that has never left Bombay. So yes, I do think that would be an interesting element to your story, and would love to know more. We have Bermuda, Trinidad, what other Jamaica. I'm thinking what other places we have clients from recently. So yeah, I think that definitely would be cool. Okay, I am from an engineering background with and if you don't get to all the questions, apologies. We'll get to as many of them as we can. And then my email is scott@personalmbacoach.com. feel free to shoot me an email, and I'm happy to answer questions. So engineering background, 1 year of work experience, and I have some family business, and I want to take a JD MBA in entrepreneurship and food science. Is it possible to do something like this? Yeah, so we have a lot of folks in family businesses, especially in India. It's a huge market for us. So a lot of Indian family business clients that we work with. So please reach out if you want help, and I can talk to you about that. The 7.56 out of 10 CGPA is obviously not, as high as it could be, but I do want to know what school you went to, because that could impact things. What score do you want to get? Let's take this offline, because I don't know exactly the school list and I haven't seen the resume. But let's say if your GPA is a little bit lower, with 7.56 probably is, than it could have been, maybe the test score should be higher. So if the average is 730, let's say the average Indian male is like 750, ish. Usually looking at kind of 20 to 30 points higher. Maybe let's cross that threshold and try to get to like a 760. But again, it depends on the school. Do I think round 1 2022 volume is down? Yes, round 1 2022 volume is down. I know that overall. Now, every school is different, right? So I'm not saying every single school it's down for. Some schools flat, some schools up a little bit, but overall numbers are down a little bit. Which top schools require IELTS or TOEFL? I don't know. So probably don't have time to go through the list of all of that. But it's definitely something good to look into. So given that most students come from corporate backgrounds, how does having work experience in an alternate background, does art, a rural sector, make or break chances of getting admitted? So I think it helps to make you a little bit more interesting, right? So if you're applying with 17 friends from Tata, and you work in art, that's cool. We have clients that work in art. I have a client now who works in art and is doing a really interesting thing. It's entrepreneurial. He's a great guy. Hello, if you're listening, I'll keep your stuff confidential. Don't worry. It's really interesting, and the essays are just different. So I kind of like that. I would say. Okay, Scotty, in here. Sorry, my internet cut out. So there were a few questions, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. So the question that I think I just left during was, which test score is more appropriate, GRE or GMAT? We talked about that a little bit earlier on, so definitely try to rewind and watch that part of it. But either test is fine, and take the one that's going to make more sense for you. And then if you scroll earlier in the presentation, you'll hear my more thorough answer for that particular question. So I have 7 years of work experience with the engineering background from India. I have a 4-month gap in work experience. Will it affect my profile value? I don't think so. 4 months and 7 years is not that long. So I wouldn't, honestly, I don't need to know more. I think that's probably fine. Yeah, that's fine, especially if it's an old gap and now you're currently working. So there's a question. I did my undergrad from a top 5 engineering school with a 3.45 GPA, and master's. Which GPA? The undergrad. The undergrad is the only one that matters. So that's what they're looking for. I get that question often. I hate to say it. I mean, they'll look at the master's. It's nice that you did better there, but master's degrees people usually do well in. So it doesn't really move the needle that much. That's the undergrad that they're looking at. Okay, which schools would you recommend to a 30 plus Indian female from IT who has 4 to 5 years of for-profit experience and 3 to 4 years of nonprofit experience? Neha, I think I would want to know a little bit more about you and what you want to do post MBA, because this is what you've done. But what do you want to do going forward? Is it consulting? Is it product work? Do you want an analytical school? A nice kind of comfort campus school, maybe like Duke or Kellogg. If you want a lot of analytical rigor, then you're looking at like Berkeley, MIT, Wharton. I also don't know your test scores, but I think that again, the kind of the goals and a little bit more about you is going to be more important than the age and for-profit and nonprofit. Now, here's a question from Dinesh. I have 11 years of experience in IT industry, and where did that go? Okay. Yes. My GMAT score is 670. I'm targeting Cambridge or Oxford. What are my chances? So I think that with the 670, that score is a little bit low, and your experience is a little bit high. So I would probably put those in the reach category right now. You certainly could get in. It would depend on the whole rest of the profile, which I haven't seen yet. But I'd probably put them in a reach, just given your scores below the average, overrepresented background, above average work experience. So that feels like those would be reach schools at this point. What are signs that the HBS interview went well, or interview went well for schools like HBS? Signs. Well, I mean, you felt good. I don't know. Harvard is weird. Look, we do a lot of the post-interview reflections, and some of my most successful clients told me they blew the interview. I think you have to be honest with yourself and think about, are you answering questions honestly? Do you feel like you're engaging with the interviewer? Do they look like they're sort of surprised? Did you trip up too much? These are things. Interviewing is a whole different process. We have webinars on that too. And I think we have the most former interviewers out there. And so we can certainly help you, but that's kind of a different process. Hi, I'm in accountant and lawyer, and just cut me off if we need to stop it. I'll keep answering questions until you cut me off. I'm an accountant and lawyer working in a law firm in India. I mentioned European business schools. I want to get your views on a 680 GMAT being a deal breaker. I don't think that's a deal breaker. I think it's certainly in range. It's a little bit lower than average. And so I'd want to, again, sort of explore your background further. But, being a lawyer is interesting. And we do have lawyers in India that we work with, each year. And so I think that brings a different element of you. I would want to kind of look through everything. I wouldn't say it's a deal breaker. I would say it's probably not the most exciting part, but certainly not a deal breaker. Okay, so MBA interviewer said I can contact him anytime, even before the decision. What sort of conversation can I have with your interviewer? I wouldn't have any conversation except to say thank you so much. I mean, they want to be polite, they want to engage. If you have a particular question, but certainly don't ask about financial aid, scholarships. No. You haven't gotten in yet. So I think you just sort of do the interview and then you sit and wait. That's the preferred method. Is a patent valued in an MBA resume? Maybe. It depends what the patent's for. I think it's nice to have, right? I don't have any patents, and so you're that much cooler than me, and why not? I don't think it's the hugest part of the process. For finance candidates invited to HBS, how do they make the final cut in such a competitive cohort? You have to do really well. I mean, HBS likes the interview, and so if you did well in the interview at HBS, you're most likely getting in. If you blew the interview, you're almost definitely not getting in. So the interview is important to HBS because you've already sort of passed that first cut, but it kind of depends on everything else. I mean, making the final cut is a little bit tricky to say just in general here what to do. But they want to see that you're engaged. They want to see that you know why you want to go to the school, that you can answer tough questions, that you're very, very personable, and that sort of thing. Post the interview, how engaged? Nothing. So you apply, you do the engagement if you do it, The interview, after the interview, you are literally silent. You don't exist. You don't exist. They don't want to hear from you. Thank you note is all you need to do. And if you do more, it's just going to decrease your chances of getting in, because then you're not following the process and you're bugging them when they want to be reading the applications. So don't engage with admissions after the interview. That's my advice. Okay, so 2 more questions, and then we'll kind of wrap up. I'm from India and working at a federal-run bank for the past 12 years. My education background is completely different, as I'm a science graduate. What is the ideal score that I must aim for in the GMAT? So it's kind of tough in profile questions like these to just give a score without knowing you. I mean, the only thing I can say is you're old and you're from India, and I think you're a male. And so let's try to get 25, 30 points above the median score. That's probably the most that I can say right now. But if you're interested in working with us, I'm happy to go into more depth. I want to ask your opinion on MBAs who only management science track to get STEM as an international student. Is that a good choice, or should you choose MBAs where you have a choice of other concentrations? So the whole concentration STEM, it's just a game. Do what you want to do. Even within a concentration, you can take other classes. So it's just a game to get around the silly visa rules that we have here in the US. I don't think it matters, honestly. So if you're picking a program that is a STEM designation, that's going to help you, great. And if you want to take other courses, great, you can still do it. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. You just kind of pick the schools that are right for you. And then there's lots of classes that you could take. The concentration and major doesn't matter so much in business school. I think it was real estate and strategy. I think in real estate and strategy concentration, but you can take all kinds of courses. So great. Well, look, thank you everyone for joining. It was great to virtually meet all of you, answer all of your questions. For those of you looking at hiring a consultant, please reach out, www.personalmbacoach.com, and we'd love to engage with you and tell you a little bit about what we do and what we offer. And I want to wish you the best of luck and hope to see you all soon. Thank you, Abhijit and GMAT Club. Take care.